every time I tell Liam to do something, he's going to ask, does Dad have my best interests in mind? And his experience is going to tell him, I'm not sure he does. You see, if you've had a good experience with parents, if you have parents who you've learned to trust because you know that they have your best interest in mind, it's easier to obey. And if you've had less than ideal parents who maybe didn't always have your best interest in mind, you know that it's very difficult to obey. Can I just step off to the side for just a second? Say, this is a great warning for parents, that we don't want to do things that are going to make it hard for our children to obey us, because how our children see us will deeply impact how they see God, and how they obey us will have an awful lot to do with how they obey God. There's a great responsibility on parents to make sure that we don't do things that make it difficult for our children to obey. Can we trust God? You know, if we want to obey the 10 Commandments, foundational to that is our ability to trust God. Is God trustworthy? Think of the stories we've looked at this year in the Bible. The story of Abraham. Did God provide for Abraham? Over and over. Half of Genesis is the story of God's provision for Abraham. He provided him miraculously with a son. He provided him with great land. He provided him with wealth. He provided him with a great reputation. Whenever Abraham was in need, God provided what he needed. Even when Abraham lost faith, it went down to Egypt, God provided a solution. Well, what about further back? What about Adam and Eve? Did God provide for Adam and Eve? Remember what it says about the Garden of Eden? That God provided this garden for them, the ideal living space. And what did he populate the garden with? He said, trees of all kinds that were good to eat. And God said, you may freely eat of these trees. And remember when God looked at Adam and he said, this guy needs a partner, he provided a partner. And even when Adam and Eve disobeyed, Genesis is quick to point out to us that what God did is he provided animal skins for clothing. Because God is a God who provides. What about Israel, his chosen people? After 430 years of slavery, it might have been easy to say God doesn't provide, but then he provided Moses, and he provided 10 plagues. And I don't know if you've read this, but as they left Egypt, what happened? The Egyptians were like, get out of here, please. Here, take all our stuff and leave. And the nation of Israel walked out of Egypt like rich, because God provided. And they got to the Red Sea, and here comes Pharaoh's army. And what did God do? He provided a way through. And even when they got out in the desert and they began to complain and whine, God provides what we need. Now, we don't always necessarily know what we need. And sometimes we find ourselves in times that are difficult and that are hard. But it seems to me that those who are most obedient to God are those who are most convinced that even in the difficult times, God is concerned with our needs. That's what we see in Hebrews 11, when we see all these heroes of the faith who are commended for acts of obedience to God, even when the outcome was in doubt. We can trust God because God is a God who provides what? Some of our needs? Most of our needs? God provides all of our needs according to his riches and glory. Who wrote that? Paul. Where was Paul when he wrote that? He's in prison. Most of his friends had deserted him. He wasn't sure if he was going to live. And he writes, my God will provide all your needs. Well, hey, Paul, is God going to get you out of jail? I don't know. Hey, Paul, is God going to restore relationships with these friends who have abandoned you? I don't know. Paul, is God going to let you live? I don't know. But I know that God provides me with everything I need. You know, Paul would have said this. He would have said, if God doesn't get me out of jail, it's because I didn't need to get out of jail. If God doesn't provide me with more friends, it's because I don't need more friends. If God doesn't provide me with life, it's because I didn't need life. You want to know how to know what you need? If you want to know what you really need, look at what God has given you. That's what you need. God provides everything we need. God is a trustworthy God who deserves our obedience. And see, when we trust God, that brings us to the second virtue. It makes it much easier to be content with what God has provided. If I can trust that God provides all I need, then I can be content with his provision. Self-centeredness. I think self-centeredness is often at the root of most sins. And we can call it lots of different things. We can call it pride or greed or selfishness, arrogance, whatever you want to call it. But the focus on myself, on me, and what I need. All of us think we need more than we need, don't we? I sometimes wonder how God feels about all the things we think we need. Because remember, he's provided everything we need. And I sometimes wonder how he sees us when we keep coming to him saying, I need this, I need this, I need this. I've got a short video clip. It's kind of funny, but I think it's going to show you how God sees us when we keep saying, this is what I need.
And I don't need any of this. I don't need this stuff. And I don't need you. I don't need anything except this. This ashtray. And that's the only thing I need is this. I don't need this or this. Just this ashtray. Just this paddle game. The ashtray and the paddle game, and that's all I need. And this remote control. The ashtray and the paddle game and the remote control, and that's all I need. And these matches. The ashtray and these matches and the remote control and the paddle ball. And this lamp. The ashtray, this paddle game and the remote control and the lamp, and that's all I need. And that's all I need, too. I don't need one other thing. Not one. I need this. The battle game and the chair, and the remote control, and the matches, for sure. Well, what are you looking at? What do you think I am, some kind of a jerk or something? And then, that's all I need.
That's all I need. I need this. You know, how often do we say to God, God, thank you so much for all you've given me. You've given me all I need this. Contentment is freedom from having to keep saying, I need this. Because contentment is a willingness to rest in what God has provided. Contentment is freedom from the God of self-centeredness. Contentment is being satisfied with what God has provided. Contentment is relying on the riches and power of God. And contentment is recognizing that the only thing I'll ever need has been given to me free of charge.